Women need to be soft, compliant, malleable, and definitely we're not supposed to be warriors, right? Isn't that the cry out of how we need to be more feminine? Well, here's the thing. And yes, I'm doing this again. I mean, I'm just fired up after this interview that I just had with the author. Her name's Cynthia Gabriel, by the way, and she wrote this book, Natural Hospital Birth. And we were talking about the right support and how, of course, in that space, when you're birthing something, you need to have people on the outside as your protectors. So we were really getting into how a partner can better support you in labor as a woman, or if you're a man and you're watching this, then how you can support your partner in labor. But the idea is that we have this thought that the king rules, correct? The king is the one that goes out to battle. But we forget about the queen. And in the game of chess, who protects the king? Now, this ties back into the story of Elizabeth Woodville. I really love this connection that they had, because Edward had to fight for their kingdom multiple times. Before he died, he had to continue to fight for the kingdom. And even after he died, I mean, that could have been a really messy situation. I mean, their two sons were murdered. Look it up. It's The Boys in the Tower. And the story goes is that these boys were imprisoned in the tower, and then somebody went and killed them. And these were young boys. I mean, they were like the age that my son is. Like, I think one was only 14 and the other was 12. I'm not exactly sure on their ages, but I mean, they were little boys. And they were murdered. Why? Well, because they would come of age and they'd take back the throne. So even if their uncle didn't do it, I mean, we never really know with history what really went down. We can only go by the victors who wrote the history books and what those accounts were. I mean, this was several centuries ago. But what we do know is that at that time, Elizabeth Woodville was very, very smart in how she was able, when Edward lost his crown for a while, she went into hiding with their children. And after he died and things were messed up again, she did everything in her power to ensure that her daughter got back on the throne as a queen. And that marriage that she had with Henry VII really solidified the dynasty, the legacy. So when people say that a woman needs to be soft, there's strength and power in their softness. A woman who has no boundaries is someone who's very easily manipulated. I'm going to be very clear about that. You don't want to be easily manipulated. You don't want people to take advantage of you. You also don't want to be so compliant that you lick your captor's hand like a big, dumb dog. There is also a quiet strength with women. Yeah, we are probably not built to go out and fight with swords. I mean, some of us can and some of us have. I mean, Joan of Arc has gone out and she was fighting and she was burned as a witch for it, but still. Women can be leaders, we can fight. If we have to, we can fight. We may not have the muscle mass that men have, but we have something else. We have our cunning. Sometimes being the smallest on the battlefield is an advantage. You're a smaller target. Sometimes it's not your strength that keeps you alive, but your smarts. And I mean, there's some very intelligent men out there that maybe they're not a super strong bodybuilder, but they could still probably flip a 200-pound tire, and you wouldn't think it by looking at them, but they can do it because of their determination and their drive. And, you know, when someone that you underestimate suddenly surprises you, well, it just goes to show that there are many layers to someone's personality. As someone who used to be quite weak looking, I mean, I was very, very skinny. I was very, very tiny. I'm only 5'4", by the way, and I'm less than 110 pounds soaking wet. I recently weighed myself. So, yeah, I probably could not really bench press anything. However, if I'm good and mad enough, if I'm determined enough, I'm going to move my furniture halfway across the room. I find ways to do it. It might take me longer than someone who's got a lot of muscle, and I've been able to do it. I may have to take breaks, but I can get the job done. And I mean, a woman who's very tiny can give birth to a 10-pound baby and no problems. I've seen this. This is why it drives me crazy in the medical system that people say that a woman who's got a tiny frame is going to have more trouble giving birth. That's not true. She can be really strong and badass, and that baby can just slide out. It's not about your body that really determines whether you're going to win a war. It's about everything else. There's cunning, there's strategy, and there's heart. If you don't have the heart, then if somebody comes along and tries to bribe you to take away your kingdom, and they're like, hey, look, your husband's off at war and he's losing. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to surrender, and it's going to be, you're just going to pass on the castle to us, or else it's going to be the worst for you and for your children. And you don't want that, do you? I mean, your true love's already dead. Like, your king is already going to be dead on the battlefield. So as a woman, you really don't have a lot of power here, and you might as well just surrender peacefully and quietly. And maybe someone who's weak would succumb. Elizabeth Woodville did not. She knew that Edward was going to win. In fact, there's a quote inside of The White Queen. Let's see if I can find it. Where he basically says that he's going to win. Where was it? I'm trying to remember. Where he basically tells her that she must wait for him. This is right after they'd gotten married. 3 nights pass in this haze of pleasure until the last morning when he says, I have to go, my love, and I will see you when it is all over. It is as if someone has thrown icy water in my face, and I gasp and say, you are going to war? I have my army mustered, and my spies tell me that Henry is commanded by his wife to meet her on the east coast with her troops. I shall go at once and bring him to battle, and then march to meet her as soon as she lands. I clutch at his shirt as he pulls it on. You will not go right now. Today, he says, gently pushing me away and continuing to dress. But I cannot bear it without you. No, but you will. Now listen. This is a different man from the entranced young lover of our 3-night honeymoon. Interesting how they say 3. Rule of 3. Yeah, I have been thoughtless of everything but our pleasure, but he has been planning. This is a king defending his kingdom. I wait to hear what he will command. If I win, and I will win, I will come back for you, and as soon as we can, we will announce our marriage. There will be many who will not be pleased, but it is done, and all they can do is accept it. I nod. I know that his great adviser, Lord Warwick, is planning his marriage to a French princess, and Lord Warwick is accustomed to commanding my young husband. If luck goes against me, and I am dead, then you will say nothing of this marriage and these days. He raises his hand to silence my objection. Nothing. You would gain nothing for being the widow of a dead impostor whose head will be stuck on the gates of York. It would be your ruin. As far as anyone knows, you are the daughter of a family loyal to the house of Lancaster. You should stay that way. You will remember me in your prayers, I hope. but it will be a secret between you and me and God. And two of us will be silent for sure. One of us is God, and the other is dead. My mother knows. Your mother knows the best way to keep you safe will be to silence her page boy and her lady in waiting. She is prepared for that already. She understands, and I have given her money. I swallow a sob. Very well. And I should like you to marry again. Choose a good man, one who will love you and care for the boys and be happy. I would want you to be happy. I bow my head in speechless misery. Now, if you find you are with child, you will have to leave England, he commands. Tell your mother at once. I have spoken to her and she knows what to do. The Duke of Burgundy commands all of Flanders, and he will give you a house of your own for kinship with your mother and for love of me. If you have a girl, you can wait your time, get a pardon from Henry, and come back to England. If you leave it for a year, you will be deliciously notorious. Men will be mad for you. You will be the beautiful widow of a dead pretender. Enjoy it all for my sake, I beg you. But if you have a boy, it's a different matter altogether. My son will be the heir to the throne. He will be the York heir. You will have to keep him safe. You may have to put him into hiding till he is old enough to claim his rights. He can live under an assumed name. He can live with poor people. Don't be falsely proud. Hide him somewhere safe until he is old enough and strong enough to claim his inheritance. Richard and George, my brothers, will be his uncles and his guardians. You can trust them to protect any son of mine. It may be that Henry and his son die young, and then your son will be the only heir to the throne of England. I don't count the Lancaster woman, Margaret Beaufort. My boy should have the throne. It is my wish that he has the throne if he can win it. Or if Richard and George can win it for him. Do you understand? You must hide my son in Flanders and keep him safe for me. He could be the next York king. Yes, I say simply. I see that my grief and my fear for him is no longer a private matter. If we have made a child in these long nights of love-making, then he is not just a child of love. He is an heir to the throne, a claimant, a new player in the long deadly rivalry between the two houses of York and Lancaster. This is hard for you, he says, seeing my pale face. My intention is that it should never happen, but remember, your refuge is Flanders if you have to keep my son safe, and your mother has money and knows where to go. I will remember, I say. Come back to me. He laughs. It is not forced. It is the laugh of a happy man, confident in his luck and his abilities. I will, he says. Trust me. You have married a man who is going to die in his bed, preferably after making love to the most beautiful woman in England. He holds out his arms, and I step towards him, and feel the warmth of his embrace. Make sure you do, I say, and I will make sure that the most beautiful woman in your eyes is always me. He kisses me but briskly, as if his mind is already elsewhere, and he detaches himself from my clasping hands. He is gone from me long before he ducks his head to get through the doorway, and I see that his page has brought his horse round to the door and is ready to go. So, as you can see, true love does conquer all, because when you have your true love waiting for you, or when you are out on the battlefield, or when you know they are out on the battlefield, you have an important job of fortifying the kingdom. So, Annie Lala, my dear friend and mentor and soul sister, says that a true love relationship is like two wings on one bird. And if one wing is stronger than the other, the bird veers into the ground. It can't sustain itself. So when you are trying to build a kingdom, a legacy, and you want that legacy to survive, you need the best possible mate. Not just somebody to be your good enough baby daddy or your good enough baby mama in the case of the world today, or somebody who's just going to dote on you while you just do whatever. But if you truly want a legacy, if you truly want everything that you desire out of life and that transcendence of all of your wounding and patterns, well, then you need to be patient. You need to wait for your true love. You don't go out and just marry a French princess. And you certainly don't assume that because of your lower standing or because you need to marry quickly to be seen as respectable in society, that you just pick any good man. Elizabeth of Woodville is not going to just pick any man. Even if Edward had died on that battlefield, she would have held out for the best out of all of those men that came out and saw her as this desirable woman who managed to entrance a king when all others could not have kept him. When he was considered to be a most eligible bachelor, and at the same time, he had in the past had women falling at his feet, but she was his true love. So when you look at, it's like, who is this alluring woman who has managed to make a king fall at her feet, almost like Cleopatra with Mark Antony and Julius Caesar? When you look at that, the desirability of a woman is quite powerful. No, we may not have brute strength, and we may not be able to fight our battles quite the way men can. However, we do have other ways, and those ways can be used for evil or they can be used for good. The reason Edward won the throne was not just because he was really good with a sword and very cunning and he was very sure of himself. He knew what he had waiting for him, and he now had a reason to survive. Had he not met Elizabeth Woodville, perhaps he might have given up. Perhaps he might have just married that French princess, or he would have had his head on a spike. Would that legacy have happened? Would Henry VIII have come into power? Would he have made it okay for divorce to be a thing? Because remember, Henry VIII actually invented divorce. He didn't want to cut off Catherine's head. He just wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. And Anne Boleyn had also bewitched him in a way that he loved her so much that even when the whole world turned against her, he hired the best swordsman that he could find so that she would not suffer in her execution. He knew it had to be done. She understood, and he granted her that last wish. He knew that if the entire kingdom had turned against them in that moment, that he would lose the throne, and she would have been killed even worse, and she probably would have been dragged through the streets as a prostitute or something. I mean, medieval society was pretty brutal. So when you're looking at the brutality of society, when you're really looking at what people will do when they want to tear someone down that has more than them, even if it's not really justified, even when they are people that are beloved, you know, you don't win wars just by hitting a sword and being better than the other fighters. You could, but when you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. And in the end, it's not the one who happens to have the dragon fire or the wildfire or the person that you would expect to have the most strength in their armies. Sometimes it's the most unassuming figure, the one that's kind of playing in the background, the one that you don't notice until the end. But they have basically been pulling the strings all along, and they are the one with the most heart. and they are the ones to lead. I mean, Jon Snow just did not want it. He didn't want to be king. He had the heart, but he didn't want it, and he ran away. But Bran, I mean, I get the ending. I get why people are kind of annoyed by that. But it was set up from the beginning. If you really look at it, if you read the book, this is the thing, you have to read the book to really understand why that ending happened. If you just watched the show, you're not going to understand why Sansa became queen in the north, why Jon Snow went off back into the wildlings and to lead them. You aren't going to understand why Bran got the throne if you don't read the books. There is so much more to be found in the actual original story than somebody's adaptation and interpretation of it. And I mean, when you think about it, when you're asking the author, well, what's the end game? But the author hasn't gone through the middle, and you have to try to piece together somebody else's story, it doesn't work. It's like my content. Why do I put all my content out for free? Because the most valuable thing is me. Why is it that true love relationships are the most powerful? Because again, it's like two wings on one bird. The queen protects the king. She protects the interests, not because of it's her interest, but because she loves him so much that she cannot bear to have his legacy destroyed even after his death. And Elizabeth Woodville was so determined. She's like, my sons are dead. They will never assume the throne. They are dead. However, my eldest daughter has the opportunity to still be queen. And our legacy, mine and Edward's, can live on. So we're going to marry House Lancaster and House York to each other so that the fighting stops. Because that was the purposes of marriage back then, was to take two kingdoms that would otherwise go to war because of their equal power dynamics and marry them to each other. And in that alliance, we then had the legacy of Henry VIII. We have the story of the 6 wives, but Anne Boleyn, Henry's true love, she gave birth to Elizabeth. And the dynasty, the legacy that Elizabeth I brought out just shows how strong a woman can be even when she is not married. That is an inspiration for all of us. Elizabeth did not have to always be soft. She was supposed to be because of what was expected in the gender conformity of the time. But instead, she was powerful. You did not mess with Queen Elizabeth and live to tell the tale. And it's no wonder when you have two powerful people that are in Elizabeth's lineage, her grandparents and her great-grandparents, you really recognize the strength of that legacy. So again, yes, sometimes it can look like a woman is weak. It can look like a woman doesn't have much resources left to her. I mean, in my case, I know that things aren't always going to be rosy, and power can change hands. I also recognize that money comes and goes. I recognize that alliances come and go. But true love, that is eternal. Even in death, that is eternal. Songs have been written, battles have been fought, wars have been won by true love. Love is truly the answer, and it must be true. So, in closing, it's always those that are underestimated, but once they find love, they can move mountains. They can win wars. They will do everything it takes to get back into their arms. There's a song in Hercules, it's like, to look beyond the glory is the hardest part, but a hero's strength is measured by his heart. Down an unknown road to embrace my fate, though that road may wander, it will lead me to you. And 1,000 miles will be worth the wait. It might take a lifetime, but somehow I'll see it through. And then it's like finding a hero's welcome, waiting in your arms. And I mean, I'd quote the whole song I'd even sing it if it wasn't for my throat. But yeah, a true queen in her power is both fierce and strong and independent, and also she surrenders her heart in her love of her king. And a true king is soft and gentle and a safe place for her to land, to rest her head when it starts to get too much, to assure her that yes, this is hard for you. I know it is. And I promise you, I'm coming back. I'm coming back because there's no way in hell that I'm going to be able to stay away. Like, I'm going to be thinking about you while I'm on that battlefield. I am going to use that strength to keep me fighting. Because, baby, you have bewitched me, and there is absolutely no other woman that is ever going to turn my head. So don't worry. I'm coming home. I'm going to win. I'm not just winning for me anymore. I'm winning for us. And when your true love says that, maybe not even the words, maybe it's just in their eyes. Maybe it's just something that you see where you read between the lines of what they're telling you. Well, then it doesn't matter how long it takes them to win that battle. You know they're coming home. And it's going to be really good because, of course, go off and fight your battle, my love. And when you come home, I will be there waiting for you. And you are going to... Well, I mean, I'm a romance writer and I would probably have had a whole lot more put in this. But I mean, I'm giving the author the credit where it's due. But yeah, I have a different way of saying things. And he knows. Anyway, that's what I wanted to add to in closing. We are coming through the eclipse, so things should be shifting soon. If you have been waiting, and you've also noticed that you are more in your power, just be patient. Keep your kingdom fortified. Your king's coming home. And for any kings out on the battlefield right now who are quite sure who their true love is, keep fighting. And just know, she can't wait to welcome you home, and she has been fortifying your kingdom for you the whole time. There will be more abundance waiting for you. So go fight those battles. Win. And everything you've been fighting for, it will all be worth it in the end. Even when it's hard. Namaste. Have a great weekend. I know I will. Bye.